Hi there, everyone. How are you guys? I hope all of you are okay. It's a pleasure to be live once again here in my reality check leadership. Today I have two amazing guests that I will bring on board right away. So let me introduce you to my incredible guests of today, GJ from the Netherlands and Francisco directly from Barcelona. How are you guys?
I'm very well, thank you.
Cool, great. It's a pleasure, and it's great to have you here. I'm hearing a bit of echo once again here in my reality check leadership. Trying to see what's happening, but I'm hearing a bit of echo.
Yes, I think I was also watching at LinkedIn, so I really enjoy looking at us.
This is a man who is not content with watching himself on the recording screen. He also wants to watch the live at the same time.
Exactly.
Like, how do I look? Am I coming across well?
That's why I was thinking, is it me? Is it my echo or not? That's cool. I'm glad it's sorted out. Guys, thank you so much. We have already people saying hello to Andrea. He's just sending a wave saying hello to everyone. So let's start this conversation about leadership, but mostly about storytelling, which is something that I'm quite sure you guys are fond of and you guys like. But the first things first, I would like you to introduce a bit yourselves, talk a little bit about you. But in order to do it, I'm going to challenge you to tell a story. So we're going to use here a really cool thing called, let me see if I can share my screen. This one. Yeah, let me see. I'm going to share my more than one story. Here we go. So this is a slide deck. I'm going to ask you to say a number from 11 to 60. And then we're going to have from 11 to 60, we're going to have a card. That card has the beginning of a story. And you'll have to tell us a bit about you through that story. GJ, let's start with you, guy. Tell me a number from 11 to 60.
32.
32. It's okay. So let's see 32, where we are. Okay. Tell about a place that makes you feel good.
Home is a place that makes me feel good, but Amsterdam is also a place that makes me feel good. Well, I was born in 1957, and I was a pretty small boy when I popped on Earth. And my parents were really happy with me, and I had a fairly happy youth. I went to school as a sometimes a pain in the ass, but in general, a normal guy with some friends. And I had a lot of sisters. I still do have a lot of sisters. I have 4
Okay.
of them. And I really missed having a brother. And by the time I had one, I was 14, and I was too old, or he was too young for me to play with him. But eventually he came. But there's a big gap between us. There's like he has a completely different life from the life that I have lived. I went through the struggles my parents had when my dad started his company, and the building up of the country. That was right after, well, like 12 years after the war, the Second World War. So we were lived in some poverty. Not that I remember much of it, but still, it's something that it's a different life than what my brother had. And
Right.
but I still do have happy memories about it, because there was love and there was care and there was hard work.
So how many are you?
There were 6.
That's a big family.
It is. Yeah, we're Catholics.
We are 4 at home, or we were 4 at home. Me and my two sisters and one brother, and it was already a lot of everything. It was already a lot of everything. With 6, it's another story. But cool. So Amsterdam, a place that's
Amsterdam is the place that
brings
makes me
you
happy.
good memories.
Yes, I was born there, and it's like, well, I've been living in Haarlem now for the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I went back to Amsterdam, which is only 15 minutes away with the train, I had the feeling I was going home. Now it's like, well, that feeling has gone. Now it's like when I come home to Haarlem, it's like going home. But Amsterdam has been in my heart and soul for many, many years, even while I didn't live there anymore.
Cool. Thank you so much for having shared this. Francisco, let's go to you. So a number from 16 to 60. Let's go.
24.
24. Ooh, tell about something you look forward to. Something that you look forward to.
I'm a very strange person.
Just for starters.
That's it. That's all
Just
I'm
for
gonna say.
starters.
I'm a very strange person in that I don't look forward to things often because I find that there's so many interesting things. There's so many interesting things happening every moment of your day that looking forward to something tomorrow is putting off the enjoyment of this conversation, the glass of wine I have next to me, and this drives my wife mad because she we back in the days we used to travel a lot and we would go on holiday every few weeks, or not go on holiday but travel on the weekends. In Europe, EasyJet, Ryanair, just get on a flight and go. And she was like, I'm so excited for this trip to whatever, right? Oh, we're going to Prague, it's great. And I'm like, you're not excited about it. I was like, well, listen, Game of Thrones is on. I'm pretty excited about that. And it's like, but this trip is 2 weeks away. Do you want me to not enjoy everything from now to then? Because there's other stuff you and I are gonna do until then. It's like, you're too boring. so that's my approach. I try to look forward.
You still have a wife, right? You still have a wife. That's something.
Well, she realizes that it's very difficult to raise children without someone else, and our family is all in Brazil. So it's either me or she has to find another husband, and with 2 children, that's not going to be easy. So she's stuck with me, I guess.
Cool. So where were you born, Francisco?
So I'm like Jason Bourne. I'm like the crap Jason Bourne. I have plenty of passports, but no skills. I was born in the US. I was born in Philadelphia, but I grew up in Brazil, and I travel around with an Italian passport. So make of that what you will.
Cool. So someone that was born in the Netherlands, Brazil, and myself, I was born in the north of Portugal in Vila Real, a small mountain city. But now I live in Lisbon with the family. So I have, Asger is listening to us and he's hearing us. Well, Asger, great to see you guys. How are you?
Asger.
Cool.
Hello, Asger.
Guys, thank you so much for that introduction and for telling us a little bit about you. So one of the things that I love, I was sharing with you before we started, is topics about leadership. And leadership is something that affects me and affects a lot of people every single day. And let's say the topic that I would like to address today is storytelling and leadership, because I do think that those things come hand in hand. And storytelling is a way, let's say, it's a tool that allows leaders to share the message in a positive way, in a better way. So the first question I'd like to challenge you to share a little bit about that is, how is storytelling important in your lives? So why, let's start with you, Francisco, because your key topic on LinkedIn is story powers. How can stories affect everyone's lives? Tell us a bit about that. How did you get into that positioning and that area of work and passion?
As you can see, I'm a big reader. So this is just these are real books. This is not a fake Zoom bookshelf. So I've always read. Been very passionate about stories since I was a kid. And about 10 years ago, I started doing public speaking. So I was always that weird kid that liked being in front of the class and presenting. But 10 years ago, I started doing that more systematically. And the one thing I realized after a while was that whenever there was a speech of mine that people loved, and whenever there was a speech that people came to me afterwards or sometimes years later and said, I remember that, it was always the story about your ex-wife, or the story about that rat, or the story about Tuscany. And when I decided to pursue this career, the storytelling seemed one of the most obvious things to focus on. Because again, once I started paying attention, I realized that was something I had been doing and had been in love with for a very long time. So that was very easy for me. And as far as the whole story powers thing, I'm a complete nerd. I like superheroes, so I wanted to have something that kind of had that feeling of superpowers, because I do believe storytelling is a superpower. I think that when we realize that we are made of stories, our brain works in stories, there's a massive amount of power you gain both over your own life and also in getting your message across to people and inspiring them to action.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. GJ, I've seen one of the videos that drove me to I need to have GJ on my live was a video that you did, a couple of weeks ago. I think it was on your LinkedIn profile. It was in English.
Yes.
And you were talking about the situation that we are at the moment, right?
Yeah,
And,
metaphorically.
Yeah, metaphorically, exactly. Yeah. And I was listening to it, and I couldn't, turn off. Normally, you start seeing a video, and I think your brain immediately says, "Will I turn off? Will I not? Will I disconnect? Will I not disconnect?" And every word you were saying were taking me somewhere. How did you, fell in love with this notion of sharing and communicating that way?
Well, I too was surprised by what happened to us last year with this pandemic. And while I was preparing for new adventures in another in a world that I knew, I had to lock myself up almost permanently just to stay safe. And I had to, within my 42 square meters that I have here in my home, I had to think of new things to do to keep myself sane, to prepare myself for a future to come. And I had just finished an education in filmmaking, a camera journalism. I was doing stand-up. And I thought, well, maybe I can and I discovered LinkedIn as a platform that I could use to expand my knowledge, the people I knew, wherever they were. So everything combined, I once at one moment thought I have to do something. Just sitting here in my house is not gonna change anything. So I have to do something. Right. And this is what I can do without being at risk. So let's make funny movies and tell people, help people using this platform. Well, I started like with my cell phone, just recorded it like that and posted it. That was a really scary moment, I can tell you. My first video, no script, just read it, all my thoughts and posted it. Nothing happened. There was nobody that said, you really should stop doing this. People were actually saying, that's a good tip. That's something I can use.
Right.
So I kept doing that. And I just kept looking to the right form or formula to be able to do this. And then as a lover of stand-up comedy, I thought, well, maybe I should make myself a little theater and write something every week that I call Over My Shoulder, as looking back at something and talk about it in a funny way. And I have so many international friends here and people that I met, people that have helped me with content, with tips, with tricks, with and Oscar is one of them. That I thought, well, I keep doing them for my fellow Dutch people, but I gotta do one in English. Well, that's the one you saw, and that's what
it says international.
See, if you do things start to happen. And that's what I tell people: nothing will change if you won't change. And I give them this example. I started putting content online, and all of a sudden, people I never thought of getting in touch with are coming to me, are reaching out to me, like you did. So and that's what I do. And well, it's a hell of a job writing every week something of 2 minutes. And make it funny, and film it, and edit it, and post it. Because I finished one today, and I posted at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, because that's my standard time for this clip.
Yeah.
But it's a way to communicate, to be funny, as well as to give a message to people in a way that it will do something. It will inspire them. It will spark something. At least that's what I hope. And so far, so good.
Exactly. I confess that I've had to translate a couple of posts, because you also write the small intros, but LinkedIn has the translate button. I was usually pressing the translate button to see what you were writing. And the translations are quite good, I can tell you.
They are indeed. Yes, LinkedIn is very good at that.
Yeah. In fact, I have something to ask you, Francisco, because, well, Brazilian, living in Barcelona, so and traveling a little bit around the world. Your platform of communication normally is English, right? I've seen I've seen English as the language.
Yes.
And the first thing when I started to use LinkedIn, I started in Portuguese, and I clearly understood. I know I can make an impact in Portugal, but I will get much more knowledge and experiences if I make it international, right? Because Portugal, it's a 10 million country. If 1 million uses LinkedIn, I would be already very, very surprised. Probably not even half. But does communicating in a different language, does it affect the way we tell our stories?
Yeah, 100%. I think the very first thing I would say is that I had no desire to communicate and to write in Portuguese on LinkedIn, because it's a stupid language. I mean, it has a million conjugations.
Let me change here.
I speak Portuguese. I can say that. It's a silly language. It has like so many conjugations for everything. Like all the objects have genders. It's just nowhere near as easy as English. And to be honest, I have been out of Brazil for so long now that I've been speaking in English and thinking in English for I think the last 20 years. I speak to my kids in English, so there is no there was no question in my mind. But to your point, it makes a massive difference if you're not speaking in the right language. So maybe you understand English okay, but you're not fluent in it. So whenever someone's trying to talk to you in English, that it just doesn't work that well. Like some of the message comes through, but not all of it. Your brain is trying really hard to get it. And this is one of the ways I explain to people why stories are important, because stories are the language of the brain. If you're communicating in facts and figures and you have all these PowerPoints and stuff, the brain is not wired for that. The brain is not wired for statements without context or for abstractions. The brain is wired for stories. So it's no surprise that when you tell someone a story, they get your point, they pay more attention, and they remember. When you tell them an opinion, none of those things happen. So I think that speaking at the right language, and a language that connects with people emotionally is essential for good communication. And the same problems you come across when you go to a new country that you don't speak the language well, every single person in business comes across when they keep trying to, sound smart and use corporate speak or all this abstract stuff instead of using something that has thousands of years of track record as an effective communication tool.
I just got a comment saying I was totally off in terms of LinkedIn users in Portugal. Really?
Oh.
There are 3 million LinkedIn users in 2019. My God, 3 million. I'm really surprised with this number. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for putting that out. People aged 25 to 34 were the largest user group, 2 million people. I am really surprised.
Because everybody in Portugal is looking for a job.
Exactly. Not only in Portugal, I think everywhere. Now everyone is looking for a job. I have a question about you ended up talking about the corporate language and how we communicate facts and figures. It's normally it becomes really dull, right? It becomes, here it comes, here's the EBITDA number, here is the revenue number, etc. What do you guys? What would be your advice / proposition to a financial director or a CEO sharing information about the company in a more interesting way? What can they do?
Talk from the heart.
Okay, that's cool.
I have done many presentations the last 2 or 3 years on for people in live audiences in large venues, groups from 20 to 100 people on networking, and I can give them tips and tricks and on how to do it and make an elevator pitch. But then I said, well, let's skip the elevator pitch. And I skipped my whole presentation. I told everybody I had this presentation prepared, but I want to tell you a story today. And I told them something about my ambition. I must add to this one, stories are never about you. They should always be, at least in my opinion, about the people you talk to. You have to connect with them and you have to spark something in their head, inspire them, give them an idea. But I told them a story about, because of course you tell stories about your own life, about something I had done as something I wanted. And what you see is people open up. They, instead of sitting there like, they obviously are touched by your own opening up, and they open up themselves. And all of a sudden, if you give them after the story I told, I said, well, you now tell a story to somebody else, and everybody started moving. And there's a completely different energy in this group of people. And all of a sudden, they lost their shyness. They thought, well, if he can tell a story like that, then I can tell any story as well. And people overcame their fear of talking to strangers. This was really wonderful. So talk from your heart.
Yeah, but the issue with talking from your heart on a message which is so corporative, it's difficult, right? How to transform that from maybe talk about the purpose, right? And what does the purpose mean? What those numbers impact the purpose? What do you think, Francisco?
You can read all the numbers in any report. I mean, if you know how to inspire your people, you can actually say to them, if you want the numbers, here they are, printed, whatever.
Okay.
I can to you. But this is what we stand for. This is what we want to do. This is how we as a company want to be. And this is the example that I give you. And this is the way I hope to inspire you. And anybody can talk numbers, but numbers are safe.
Right.
I guess that the numbers are important, and data in many scenarios is very important, but it doesn't mean anything without context. And the context is better described through examples or stories. And that's the most basic advice to anyone when you're trying to convince them to go from this type of typical corporate or fact-based, opinion-based communication to storytelling is give examples. So you're saying, oh, we are really struggling. Well, give an example of how the company is struggling. Talk about one employee, talk about yourself, talk about a customer. What is that one person struggling? And if you pick well, we all can relate to that example you've just given. So you can talk about the numbers can be there, and the numbers can give a dimension that perhaps you cannot give with the story. So it is very different to say the company has lost 10% of revenue or the company has lost 37% of revenue, and you're not going to fit that into the story necessarily. But what does that mean? How does that affect us? Get it to a person. Find a person being benefited or hurt by whatever you're talking about, and share that. Because once you've done that, you've given it a human dimension, and now we have someone to relate to. And then you back that up and you say, this was one customer or one employee, and you say, we have 20,000 employees and this is happening to all of them. So that's where the numbers come in. But to give the human dimension that we need, so we relate and care about what's going on, you need one person.
And I assume that can be applicable to anyone in the organization that is talking with anyone, right?
Yes. Yeah. This is always the case, right? So when you don't quite understand what someone tells you, you say, can you give me an example? So that's the difference. It's just you leading with the example. You say, listen, we're having a lot of problem. We're having a lot of problem between the sales and the marketing department. Just last week, this happened, and that's it. And you tell them,
right?
And then you go,
that will stick in, because it's an example, because it's a story. It's something that they will relate to.
Yes.
It's not just a simple. We lost 10 customers. Okay. Why did we lose the 10 customers? What did we do, and how did we do it? On this, we are in a very strange time. Of course, everyone talks about that, but you guys live, you guys love GJ. You do stand up, and Francisco, you speak and do tweet. You go to those events. Right now, you don't have that personal, physical feedback, right? So you cannot be in a room. You cannot feel the energy. Yeah. People will not laugh at you directly. They are in a camera. How does this affect it, or how do you think this will affect? Because this will, we will continue in this way, right, in the next couple of months. But how does this affect our ability to tell a story and to get impact of that? And what can we do to improve it?
I'm finding it starts to get difficult. I mean, I've been almost but isolated, or at least careful, for the last 10 months, since March last year.
Like all of us, yeah.
Yeah, I only see my girlfriend every other weekend, and that's it. And I go to the supermarket every 2 days. So I just walk up there and do my shopping, say hi to everybody. I'm glad they still recognize me with my face mask on. But I find it. I start finding it very difficult. I do every once in a while, or every 6 weeks, a Zoom session with people for the workshops that I give. But still, they're all like in screens, and you can't actually touch them. You don't feel the energy. So what I do at home is I exercise at home. Which requires a lot of discipline, but still, I'm finding it very difficult living in. On the other hand, I'm also surprised that one can last so long, this life already, without completely going crazy.
Yeah. Thanks. And you, Francisco, how do you feel that energy when you do a workshop or when you speak to a camera? Is this something that...
I think, in a way, I agree. It's the energy is completely different, and this is something where I find that for speaking in particular, I don't have 10% of the pleasure that I used to have speaking. To the camera is one thing, on stage is completely different. Also because when I'm speaking to the camera, I'm doing what I'm doing right now, which is I'm looking at the camera, and I can just about see the two of you in the corner of my eye, because that makes it look like I'm looking at you and not the camera. But so essentially, I'm giving a speech to a little black dot on my computer. Like even if there was an audience that I could see, I'm looking at the camera for most of the time. I'm not looking at people's faces. So I noticed that a lot when it comes to speaking. For workshops, because it's a lot more interaction, I don't feel it's that much of an issue. And I think it's a great thing that what has happened now has broken that idea that you wouldn't do these things online. I think now it's opened the market for everyone. You can work everywhere in the world. Everybody realizes that a workshop, at least of a certain duration, it will be fine online. So I think we need to realize that there's a lot of things, a lot of good things from a business point of view that can come out of this. But there's no question that if you're someone who particularly who relies on humor, as GJ does and I do normally, that's a very different skill. Doing that without feedback, you need to be very confident on what your material is, because you don't get immediate feedback. So I make a lot fewer jokes when I'm speaking than I used to, because I have no feedback. So if I'm bombing, I don't want to have a whole bunch of jokes that don't land and have no idea that that's happening. So you need to be very aware of certain things. But I think there's plenty of good things to get out of it. I don't want this to be the norm. I would like to go back to stages, but I think from a business point of view, there's a lot of really good things we'll get out of this experience.
True.
Yeah, I feel the same. You know, I tend to be very physical on the communication and doing. You know, I'm not saying jokes, but making the environment feel nice and pleasant for everyone. And I always feel in a Zoom or in a Teams meeting, I always feel that someone is suspicious of anything. You look into six faces that are looking at you, and you're just, what the hell are in your thoughts at the moment? Because I'm quite sure some of you are not even here. And although that can happen on a physical meeting, you can touch it. You can say, hey, tell me about that. Show me something. Stand up. Let's do something. And that's really, it's difficult. But I understand it's the new way we have to adapt. Cool. So talking a bit about leadership, guys, and which is the topic, my passion topic. Leaders have to communicate a lot. They have to communicate on a regular basis and do it correctly. GJ, you said that people should communicate from the heart, but there is a bunch of overload of information and requests that leaders have. There is a lot of, you need to do this, you need to do that, you have to fulfill your budget, you cannot lose employees. It's bombing of information.
Yes.
At the same time, they have a team to lead, and their bombing of information, they need to filter it. What tips would you do to maintain the sanity and to communicate always the message in a way that it will be understood and correctly understood when you are under such an amount of stress?
Well, it takes a while, at least that's my experience, it takes a while to build a good team. You have to really be interested in people, to get to know them and to know who your team is, who they are, and what their funny and good sides or bad sides are. So that takes a while. You have to put in a lot of time and energy in order to get that team functioning well. And then sooner or later you find out, at least in my experience, what is really important. I mean, you said it right, it's an overload on data and things you have to do. But you can really, at least that's the jobs that I had and the positions I had, you can really experiment. What if I stop doing something? What will really happen? And if something doesn't happen, if nobody is going to hold you accountable for something you haven't done, then obviously it wasn't really that important. if the team still functions, and if you I'm not the kind of team or manager or leader that is controlling everybody all the time. I mean, I have great faith in people. I hope I can help them to do what they are expected to do. That's my job. And then, but you have to be really interested in who they are. Working with teams means that you have to care for people.
So what you're saying is that if you are true and honest to what you're doing, you will find a way to connect.
Definitely. Yeah.
If you force it, it will not come out.
It will never work. It will never work. At least not in my opinion. I've been responsible for teams since many years ago. The first time I was responsible, I thought I had to tell people what to do. I mean, I was taught that way. I mean, this is what you have to do. If you don't do it, you're a bad employee or you don't meet your targets. And over the years, I realized that, of course, people need to know what kind of company they work in, what they are supposed to do. But I'm not the one who is telling them how to do it. If they get the job done, I had people asking me, "Can I go for a cup of coffee?" I said, "Who am I to decide that?" I mean, if you find the time for drink coffee or have a lunch break or go home early, not my problem. It is my problem if everybody's gone. But I mean, we had like all discussed that there's always somebody available. I mean, you don't leave, you don't go all together with the whole team. But I'm not going to make those small decisions. You have to trust people, give them faith, and help them to accomplish the task that they are supposed to do.
Francisco, go ahead. Sorry.
If you have faith in them, and if you help them accomplish it, it will work out. But if you keep being suspicious about their intentions and think that they are trying to screw you, they will eventually.
Right. Thanks, DJ. Francisco, one of the aspects I've been touching and understanding, there is Brené Brown. She talks a lot about vulnerability. And if you as a leader, with this overload of stress that I was mentioning, if from time to time you make it a bit more honest to your team and you say, look, guys, this has been, a crazy time, and sorry if the messaging is not being correct. Do you think that this vulnerability together with the story makes it much more compelling and relevant for someone, for a team?
There is no real genuine human connection without vulnerability, because when you show yourself to be fallible, when you talk about your mistakes, when you talk about your fears, you are opening yourself up to other people and saying, I'm not perfect, I make mistakes, and I'm probably just like you. And people relate to that. If you're just a super competent guy and you're talking about your achievements, one, you come across as not very likable, and two, everyone has their own insecurities, and they need to see yours so they can trust you a bit. And if you're a leader, and I think it's important to clarify that there's one thing is being a manager, the other one is being a leader. Like the person who's going to look at specific tasks, and you do this, you do that. That's a manager. That's not a leader. A leader is responsible for two things. Is supposed to creating a productive and healthy culture in their team and inspiring people to action. Okay, that's what a leader does. The person who decides who works on Saturday and who works on the late shift, that's a manager. That's not a leader. So what a leader needs to do, just trying to be very pragmatic with a certain use of storytelling, is a leader needs to first of all make sure that everybody's clear on what the goals are and the values are. And you do that by using stories to exemplify when those things are happening. So, if the value of our team is loyalty, what does that mean? What's the example of someone doing that or not doing that? And if everyone in your team can tell a story of when they saw your values in action, then you've got the right culture there. Everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, as they say. And if you're not doing that, then you don't have a team that is set on a solid foundation. You can do everything else, but if someone from the outside comes and asks you, Luis, what's really like working for GJ? What kind of boss he is like? And the story you tell is not a very good one, then there's a problem there. So the job of the leader is get those stories, find out what those stories are now. If they're not the ones you want, work to change them, and then everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing because they can all tell the same stories because they've seen it happen, and that's really your job as a leader. Is not, run sales incentives and do big sales. Those things are important, but those are short-term solutions. They're not a long-term foundation.
Yes.
There you remind me something. You remind me my grandma. I'm sorry for that, but my grandma loved to tell stories. And one of the things she did was she loved to speak and to tell stories about when she lived in North America, and she died with 94, I think. And one of the things she did was she was a great storyteller, but she listened. So she was not just bombing you with information. She would stop and listen. What was the reaction of my grandson to this and to that? And I think she would change the way she was telling the story because of my reaction. So one of the questions of a leader, one of the aspects of skills of a leader is to be also an active listener, right? To be someone that really and truthful listens. What's your view on that? As a good storyteller needs also to be a good listener.
You're asking me?
I'm asking the world.
I agree. I think listening is one of the most important things one can do. I love to talk, but I also love to listen and hear other people talk and hear what they say and hope to learn from it. So listening is essential in your communication with anybody.
Yeah, that's one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make when they talk about story in business, is that the focus is always on storytelling. There's very little focus on story listening. And one type of exercise that can be done in companies is, say the company is concerned about, I don't know, purpose, right, or engagement, or how departments are working together, whatever. And then you just get a whole bunch of people from the group that you're trying to improve, and you put them together and you run what a lot of people call a story circle. And you just say, so these are the company's mission. This is the company's mission, right? Or these are the company's values. Can you just tell me a story about when you saw that value happening in the company? And then people will give you stories that they can't give you stories, or they give you stories that have nothing to do with what the company was hoping for. And then you understand that they don't get the mission, they don't get the values, or you ask them, what's the leadership like? So when I talk to you about good leadership in this company, what sort of examples can you think of? And sometimes people have many, sometimes they will have very few. And when you get that's the real opinion of your staff and your teams. When you listen to those stories, and then you just give them to the leadership in the company and say, this is what your company really is like. Not what the survey says, not what
exactly. We just send a bunch of surveys.
These are the stories that your employees tell about you, and you get to a much deeper truth when you do that.
That's cool. That's a cool question. That's a really cool question. What are the stories that your employees tell about your company?
Yeah.
You wouldn't call them stories, though. You have to call them something else, because everybody, I don't know any stories. Yes, tell me one time in this company that you felt really valued. That's fine. Yes, I
have. You guys both are speak and are used to speak to audiences and people. What can not every leader has that ability. Not every leader has that confidence of being in front of an audience and speaking. And telling, even though he can be a great leader, those skills might not be there. What can we do to improve our confidence while talking with people?
Practice.
That's it.
Well, there's a little bit more to it, of course, but it's like swimming. I mean, you're never going to swim if you don't dive in the water. And if you don't learn to speak to audiences, if you don't climb on a stage, if you don't try doing it, and you don't have to stand up in a huge hall with 100,000 people, but you can try for like 3 or 4 people. But practice. Know what you're going to talk about. One of my tips to people who want to speak is say, well, know how much time you have to speak. If it's like 5 or 6 minutes, then you know how many words you can you can use, right. And then cut half of it. Then you have time left to interact with the audience after you've told your message. But practice is one of them, in my opinion, one of the most important things to do. Practice.
I'll resist the temptation to just tell them to tell more stories, and I'll give you something different. So first, I completely agree on the practice, and I think something everybody should do is join a Toastmasters club, because that's the easiest way to practice public speaking. You can speak. I mean, if you really wanted now, where we're online, you could do it 4 or 5 days every week across the world. But it's in most places, these are clubs that meet every week or every 2 weeks, and it's a super supportive environment. It's perhaps the only place that you can get a lot of practice in that type of environment for little or no money. Okay, so that's something everybody, I think, should join the Toastmasters Club. The second thing is that nervousness about speaking in public often comes from a misunderstanding that we care about you. We don't. We care about what you're gonna give us, what you're gonna do for us, the audience. So say, for example, you were a scientist and you've just found out the cure for the coronavirus, right? I don't care how nervous you are. If I put you in front of 500 people, you're gonna tell us about it because the message is important. And that's the problem. A lot of people are concerned about how am I gonna look? Am I going to stutter? Am I going to look like I don't know what I'm talking about? No. Is your message strong enough? And do you care about it? Is it an important message to share? Then share it. No one is going to care how bad you look, because they don't care to see how good a speaker you are. They're there to be entertained, informed, inspired, changed. So focus more on the message and what you're giving your audience, and less about how are you going to while doing it.
Yeah, when I speak with, I clearly remember talking about this with a colleague that I had, and it was she, and she was always telling me, I think everyone is just waiting for me to fail. And I think, okay, so out of the 50 people that you are there, you are completely focused on the one person that probably, but I don't think so, really wants you to fail. Because normally we don't want to see anyone fail and be, right. We want people to succeed by norm, but we tend to focus on really the shitty things that can happen.
But Luis, I have a comparison that I think it works works very well, but it works terribly for you. And GJ might help me with this one. But when you go get a haircut, which I'm sorry, Luis, you might not have.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Get a haircut, and it's not a great haircut, and you come back and you're like, this hasn't really worked. You're kind of upset and you're trying to fix it, and then you speak to your friends or your wife. No one says anything, and you're like, did you notice my hair? Yeah, it's fine. It just looks the same. That's what happens. You're speaking in public and you're thinking, oh, I'm stuttering. I didn't say this. I didn't say that. Oh, I'm doing something funny with my whatever. No one is paying attention. No one.
All right. Yeah. True.
Cool, guys. We have around 10 minutes, 11 minutes left, and I have a couple of questions here. I have one from Sergio. Hi, Sergio. How are you, my friend? Sergio asks, do you still get nervous before talking in public?
No. Well, there's a little tension, but
Okay.
it's not that I really am really nervous. I just know my stuff. I know the audience. I know what I'm going to talk about. So there's this normal tension. But I'm not really. I know people that actually throw up every time they have to climb on stage. I know comedians that use the bathroom
My
30
God.
seconds before they have to go on stage. I just say, just pull up the curtains, give me the stage.
Cool.
But it's adrenaline. But it's not really nervousness.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
what I was gonna say. It's excitement and nervousness feel very similar. So, I have been doing this for a very long time, and I practice all my speeches to death. I'll practice 4 hours for a 10-minute speech, right? So there's no question about me not knowing what I'm doing, about how the audience is going to think. I mean, none of that stuff is valid, but I sometimes get, my hands get a bit wet, sweaty, my back feels a bit funny. So that's just, as GJ says, it's adrenaline. But if the story in your head is that I am nervous, you're going to think, oh, this is terrible. I'm nervous. Look at me. No, it's just excitement because you're about something you care about. If I'm in a work meeting and someone says, can you just, get up here and explain like something very basic? There is no excitement. So I just, yeah, sure, you get up and you speak. But if someone says, can you get up here and explain this thing in front of 1,000 people? I'm gonna get excited.
Yeah, I have the same feeling, and I'm definitely not a professional speaker, but I love to be on a stage and just to get the message and see the reactions of people. One of the things I really loved to do was to do surprise my teams with cool stuff. Not the dull presentation. I remember my last kickoff meeting. In my previous company, I did a doodle, that doodle, and I've talked on top of the doodle. So I did a 3 minutes where the doodle was talking about the whole year of the company, our achievements, and I was talking and giving it the emotional touch. It was not recorded, it was live, and at the end I was just seeing people that's exactly it. You just told the story through doodling and talking about that, and that really made my day because I felt, yes, I've practiced, I had my lines, but the reaction of the people when we get there is simply incredible. I have here also another question. Sergio, once again, he asks us, can you tell us an embarrassing story of an episode when we were talking in public?
Well,
No.
I have one, but it's not.
Go ahead.
It's not quite talking in public. I'm not sure it's going to work for Sergio, but I'll try. So, what is the name of that super famous Portuguese poet? Like the main Portuguese, like he's been dead many years, but what's the name of that?
Fernando Pessoa?
Yes, Fernando Pessoa. So I think this is from him, right? So when I was 17. And I had this girlfriend, and I was very romantic. I used to write poetry and nonsense like that, right? Because I thought women liked that stuff. I thought that's what they wanted. Luís de Camões, that's it. Thank you.
Luís de Camões. Thanks, Anna.
Right. So I had this girlfriend. We had only been going out for 2 or 3 months, and I thought she was on the beach with her friends, and then I showed up. Stop sending poet names. It's either Fernando Pessoa or Luís de Camões. Stop it.
It's one of those.
So she was on the beach with her friends, and I called her and said, I'm coming over. I have a surprise for you. And I came over, and I thought it was a brilliant idea to have a T-shirt printed with a picture of her, and beneath the picture there was the line. I'm going to do it as in Portuguese for our Portuguese audience. It was que não seja imortal, posto que é chama, mas que seja infinito enquanto dure. Which in English is that, love shouldn't last forever because it's like fire, but it should be infinite while it lasts. I can't remember if this is Luis de Camões or Fernando Pessoa.
Yeah.
I had this underneath her picture, and I showed up to a house full of her female friends. These are 17-year-old girls, and I have this thing, and I think I'm the most romantic guy in the world, showing up to tell her how much I love her with that t-shirt and that poem. So yeah, that didn't go well. That wasn't my best public speaking experience, I must admit.
What about you, DJ?
Well, as a comic,
As a comic, I'm quite sure you have some embarrassing moments.
yes, and the thing is, you have a set, and one time it works, and one time it doesn't work, and you just can't figure out why. So you're on stage, and then you're all fired up because I get a little more nervous or more adrenaline on stand-up, but you're really enthusiastic. You want to hear the audience laugh, and if nothing, I mean, really nothing happens, then 5 minutes or 6 minutes are very, very long.
I can't imagine. No, I can't imagine, because that has to be the worst nightmare of a comedian, right?
It happens to anyone, and it happens, and you can't always tell when it happens. And then you have all these people that clap on your shoulder and try to cheer you up. And
Exactly.
you're dying. That's what it's called, dying on stage. That's how it feels. But then again, you climb back on again, and you do it again, and it's part of the job.
Yeah. In fact, if you love the message that you're that you are going to tell across, that you want to share, if you know the message and if you love it, it makes it much easier. Because people tend to memorize in a presentation, for example. And memorizing a presentation is never a good option, because we can clearly see that you've memorized it. You are not speaking about it.
But yes and no. So I think there's a couple of things there when it comes to presenting. The first one is that if it's an important enough presentation, there is no question that you should know it back to front. And the way you know that you know a presentation enough is that you can do it while you do something else. Like you can do it while you do the dishes. You can do it while you're in the shower. You can do it.
That's a cool tip. That's a really cool tip.
But where a lot of people get this wrong is one, you shouldn't know it word for word, because that's not, you don't need that level of memorization. And two, you should memorize an oral presentation and then write it down. You should write down an oral presentation instead of writing the presentation and then trying to memorize it. Because if you know it, you're telling it, and then you record it, you're recording something that sounds like you speak. Whereas a lot of people do, and it's just common, I used to do this for years, is you write it out because you think you're a good writer, but then when you start trying to do it, you have to keep changing it all the time because you don't talk like you write.
Right. What's your process of writing, guys? How do you do it? You just take a piece of paper and you start writing?
Yeah, well, it depends on the subject. But if it's if for my writing on the weekly clip I do, I start writing on Tuesday, and then I'll until I have like 350 words, or maybe 400, and then I'll put it in on my teleprompter, and I start reading it, and then I start just fine tuning it, because there's some words you can't say after each other. So. But I cannot say it and record it with a mistake in it. The clip I did a week before this week, I did it 40 times. It's like 2 minutes without a mistake.
Bravo.
40 times.
See, so my approach is completely the opposite. Now, again, there's many different things we can say. What's your writing process? But most of the videos that I put on LinkedIn, for example, are stories. So it's a 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes story with a takeaway. And my process is very simple now. My process is just this: I think of a story, I figure out what point I'm trying to make, and then I just turn the clock on and tell it. Okay, fine, that's too long. No, cut some this, cut that. Okay, and I tell it, and I tell it, and I tell it. I'll probably have to tell it 3 or 4 times at least. And then when the time is more or less right, I turn the camera on, I tell it. And unless I screwed up completely, that's it. All my videos are one take, no editing, nothing.
Okay.
But again, it's because I'm telling a story. It's very different if I was just trying to explain something. So, but the process that I tend to follow is there's this line that is a common one in the story world, which is don't tell a story without a point, and don't make a point without a story. So my process is usually, what do I want to share, or what am I trying to talk about? Okay, what story matches that? Or what stories have I got? What points can I talk about? Let me just answer a question. There's a question there from Katarina saying, did you marry her? Yes. She dumped me not very long after that.
Okay.
We were apart for many, many years. And then when we met again, I started not being romantic, not writing any poetry, being a bit of an asshole. And that seemed to do the trick. We've now together.
She's definitely loving this interview.
She's heard me so many times via dick that I don't think.
Guys, we are running out of time, but in the last 5 minutes, I would like to ask you to share with us, books or talks or things that have inspired you, and somehow also to share about that and see in what way can that also inspire anyone.
Okay, well, I was a little prepared on this question, so and I had to remember a dark period in my life, like 20 years ago. Somebody gave me he said, well, maybe you don't believe in God, or if you do believe in God, doesn't matter, but I'd like to recommend you this book. It's this book. It's
God.
It's by Neil Donald Walsh. Do you have it too?
No.
It's a conversation with God. The essence of the book is somebody's in real trouble and he starts writing the source of all his shit, God, and God starts to talk back to him. The essence of the book is that whether there is a God or not, he's inside you, and it inspired me a great deal. I took it out of my shelf this afternoon, and I started reading in it again, and it has the same effect on me as it had 20 years ago. So this is one book that I would recommend: Neil Donald Walsh, Conversation with God, an unusual dialogue.
I will then post a small clip about this, because that really has had a good impact on my videos, because people tend to absorb and to get more information about what inspired other people. Francisco,
So
what about you?
I'll suggest 2 books. The one book is for anyone who has any interest in storytelling and in a very good read. There's a book called Stories That Stick from Kindra Hall, which is a massive bestseller now, and it's genuinely a pleasure to read. And this is the mark of to know someone is a good storyteller or not. If they do a book on storytelling and you're not super into it,
right,
then it's rough. They don't know what they're talking about. So this is incredible, very useful, and it's great. I mean, she's an amazing storyteller. The other book is something I just read. I finished it a few days ago, and it's a book it's actually been very popular. It's called Born a Crime, from Trevor Noah. So Trevor Noah is this comedian, and he now hosts the Daily Show.
Daily Show.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a book, it's a memoir, and it's short stories of him growing up in South Africa right after the apartheid.
Right.
And it's incredible in the type of things that he lived, but it's also incredible in how funny it is. He's a massively funny guy, and his story is about how in his school he was the fastest kid because his mom was always running after him to kick his ass. And he says his mom was this super strict parent that he came to discipline, and he says, this is the type of person my mom was. She would throw a vase at me, but if it broke, it was my fault, and I asked for it. So when she threw stuff at me, I would have to think, I
need to catch it.
Yes. Is it likely to break? Yes. Grab it, put it down, keep running.
Cool. Guys, thank you, really, thank you so much for having spent this last hour with me. I know you are 1 hour ahead, so thank you
Yes.
for that.
I am.
And well, the video will be published on all the platforms, and I do appreciate it. I've had massive, laughs and good value out of this cool conversation. So really, thank you so much for having spent this time and for the generosity. And
Really
we will
nice.
continue to see each other online, and I hope one day also physically on those.
Anytime.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. Good night. Sleep well. Thank you very much.
Guys.